What if everything you thought you knew about life on Earth was only one version of the story? Imagine looking out your window right now, and instead of trees, cars, and cities, you see shadows that stretch like mountains moving across the land. You hear thunder, but it is not from the sky. It is the footsteps of creatures whose reign never ended. The world would be alive with giants, and humanity might not even exist. Tonight we're beginning an unusual journey. What if dinosaurs never went extinct? Before we step further into this alternate Earth, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Your answers always feel like signals across the dark, small connections between distant points, reminding us that even the biggest questions can be shared. Now, close your eyes and imagine the moment that never happened. 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula, releasing more power than every nuclear weapon humanity has ever built combined. That single event ended the age of dinosaurs and made way for mammals. Made way, ultimately, for us. But what if it had missed? What if the sky had stayed quiet, the oceans undisturbed, and the forests still trembling under the weight of the reptilian giants? The Earth would have remained a planet ruled not by fur and small sparks of intelligence, but by scale and power. Imagine a coastline where waves break against cliffs, and instead of seabirds, you see pterosaurs with wingspans wider than airplanes gliding on the winds. Inland, the forests are alive with sounds so deep you feel them in your bones. The low calls of sauropods as they move in herds the size of villages. And in the undergrowth, predators stalk, eyes glinting, waiting for the smallest mistake. This world would not be quiet. It would pulse with energy, with tension, with the endless dance of survival. Apex predators like Tyrannosaurus, or perhaps even more fearsome descendants, would dominate the plains. Herbivores, larger than buildings, would reshape landscapes with every step, felling trees, carving riversides into new paths. The Earth's ecosystems would evolve around their presence, every plant and creature adapted to endure the colossal scale of life. For mammals, our ancestors, this would mean an endless shadow. In our reality, they survived the extinction by being small, hidden, quick. But without the asteroid, they would remain in the dark corners of the world, never rising, never becoming dominant. Perhaps no apes, no humans. Perhaps intelligence itself would take a different form. The conflict at the heart of this idea is profound. If dinosaurs had never died, would Earth still be as beautiful, as complex, as vibrant as it is now? Or would it be locked in an age of giants, where scale mattered more than thought, and dominance was measured not by ideas, but by sheer weight? And yet, there is something strangely comforting in imagining it. The rhythm of a world still ancient, untouched by us. A planet of thunderous footsteps and endless skies, where every day feels like the first day of creation. Tonight, we begin walking into that world, not as scientists, not as dreamers, but as quiet travelers, exploring what could have been. As you drift deeper into this journey, let the thought stay with you. We are here because they are gone. But what if they had stayed? What kind of Earth would you see when you woke tomorrow morning? If the asteroid had never fallen, Earth itself would look profoundly different. The first thing you would notice is the climate. Our planet, instead of cycling through long ages of cooling and warming that favored small, adaptable creatures, would still be a place wrapped in warmth. Humid forests stretching across continents, shallow seas covering wide plains, and skies thick with moisture. This would be a world designed not for humans, but for giants. Picture the equator, not deserts of sand as we know them, but endless belts of tropical jungles. Towering ferns and cycads form canopies so high they block the sun, while beneath them, smaller plants fight for the faintest scraps of light. Instead of monkeys or parrots, the branches tremble with smaller reptilian creatures, quick and sharp-eyed, descendants of the lizards that survived alongside their colossal relatives. Move north or south, And instead of the tundra and ice we know, you would find milder lands, still green, still fertile. Ice sheets would be smaller, the poles less dominant, leaving most of the world drenched in growth. The Earth would not wear the balance it does today. It would lean heavily toward life in its largest form. Rivers would flow wider, not because of rain alone, but because herds of sauropods would carve their paths. Imagine dozens of creatures, each the length of a modern building, trudging together across landscapes, their weight reshaping the soil. Valleys might exist not through tectonics alone, but through the patient movement of these animals over millions of years. And the oceans, how alien they would feel. In our world, whales fill that role, dominating the seas with their sheer size and presence. But in a world where dinosaurs thrived, whales might never have appeared. Instead, giant marine reptiles would rule: mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, perhaps evolved into even stranger, larger forms. Standing on a coastline, you would not see dolphins leaping in play. You would glimpse monstrous shadows breaking the waves, eyes the size of lanterns watching you from beneath. The skies would not be silent either. We know birds as the delicate survivors of that ancient lineage. But imagine if their larger relatives never fell. Pterosaurs with wingspans longer than a bus, gliding with ease, casting shadows across entire valleys. Their calls echoing like horns, shaking the air. In our world, eagles rule the sky. In theirs, even the bravest human, if we existed at all, would never look up without fear. This earth would not simply be louder or busier. It would feel heavier, saturated with life so immense that humans would struggle to find a place. The balance of ecosystems would be defined by size, not subtlety. To thrive, every creature would need to endure the presence of giants. And here lies the conflict. Our Earth, shaped by extinction, created room for diversity, for delicacy, for intelligence. A planet of giants, however, may have remained locked in scale, with forests consumed by vast herds, with predators ruling every horizon. Would there ever be space for creatures like us? Fragile, clever, small? As you let this vision settle, picture it not as a fantasy, but as a possibility. Another roll of the dice that never came. A green, storm-heavy earth, filled with eyes that never closed, with footsteps that never ceased. A world not ours, but almost. Step further into this alternate earth, and you begin to see the shape of dominance. On land, there is no question. Dinosaurs would rule, not as relics, not as scattered survivors, but as the architects of ecosystems, the measure of every other life form. In our world, lions and tigers seem powerful. Here, they would be shadows in comparison. Picture the plains, endless stretches of green, where herds of hadrosaurs move like oceans of flesh. Their crests resonate with sound, low calls carrying for miles, guiding the herd like living horns. In the distance, sauropods move more slowly, necks swaying above the treetops. Each step reshapes the land, crushing bushes, forcing rivers to bend. These are not just animals, they are forces of geology. But dominance always creates conflict. And in this world, the predators are no less terrifying. Tyrannosaurus, already the icon of power, would not remain static. Given millions more years, it could have evolved into something larger, more cunning. Imagine a creature with the strength of a tyrant lizard, but sharper senses, greater endurance. A hunter not of instinct alone, but of strategy. Packs of such predators could have ruled the continents, their roars shaking the very air. Smaller predators, too, would flourish. Raptors, swift, clever, already hinting at intelligence, might have grown into new forms, balancing agility with size. Their claws, their pack behavior, their ability to coordinate. In our world, wolves perfected this role. In theirs, it might have been raptors, ruling not by scale alone, but by numbers and cunning. Every ecosystem would bend under this dominance. Mammals, those small, shivering survivors, would remain confined to the edges, scurrying at night,
feeding in shadows, never daring to challenge the daylight. In our timeline, mammals spread and adapted, growing larger, braver. Here, they would never have the chance. Every open field, every forest edge, every mountain pass would belong to the giants. And yet, the balance of power is never fixed. Even in a world of colossi, the constant arms race of evolution pushes change. Herbivores would grow armor, spikes, and plated hides. Imagine herds of ankylosaurs, their tails like wrecking balls, moving as living tanks against predators. Ceratopsians, Triceratops and its descendants, might evolve horns longer than lances, turning their herds into moving fortresses. Each defense answered by new weapons, each predator sharpening, each prey hardening. The conflict is not only survival, it is scale itself. In a world where size remains the path to dominance, would complexity ever arise? Or would Earth remain a stage of thunderous battles, endless in their repetition, magnificent but static? Pause and imagine standing on a cliff above this land. Below you, herds stretch across the horizon. Predators move at the edges, patient, waiting for weakness. The ground trembles beneath their weight. The air shivers with their voices. It is not quiet.
It is not peaceful, but it is alive in a way our world has not been for millions of years. And as you breathe in this vision, consider, in such a place, could anything else rise? Or would the age of dinosaurs be not just an era, but eternity? If the land was a kingdom of thunder, then the oceans would be realms of shadows, vast, heavy, and filled with creatures beyond imagination. In our world, whales and sharks dominate the seas. But in a world where the great extinction never came, the rulers would be different. Reptilian giants whose forms were as strange as they were terrifying. Picture standing on a shoreline. Waves crash, but the sound is muted by something deeper. A low resonance beneath the water, like the heartbeat of the sea itself. Out beyond the surf, shadows glide just under the surface. Not schools of dolphins, not the elegant leap of an orca, but immense bodies stretching longer than a bus. Mosasaurs perhaps evolved into even grander forms, with jaws wide enough to swallow a horse whole. Their bodies move with serpentine grace, tails slicing through the ocean like blades. And they would not be alone. Plesiosaurs, with long necks curling above the waves, might still rise like serpents of legend, eyes catching the moonlight before slipping back into the dark. Ichthyosaurs, built like living torpedoes, would race through currents, faster than anything humans could build for thousands of years. Imagine pods of these sleek hunters, coordinated and relentless, their presence reshaping the balance of life below. The coral reefs, instead of small fish darting through bright structures, would echo with the movements of reptilian hunters and armored prey. Giant turtles, perhaps evolved into forms larger than cars, would graze peacefully, while strange, shelled creatures drifted in their shadows. Every niche we know today, filled by seals, penguins, whales, would belong instead to the descendants of these marine reptiles. But with such dominance comes fragility. The conflict of this ocean is balance itself. In our seas, whales recycle nutrients, enriching waters with their very presence. In a world of reptiles, the rhythm might differ. Fewer creatures could grow vast, but those that did would reshape ecosystems in ways hard to predict. Would the seas flourish, alive with endless diversity, or would they narrow, locked into cycles of predator and prey, endlessly repeating? And imagine the fear such oceans would inspire in humans, if we had ever reached them at all. For us, the sea is already a place of mystery, a depth we respect but cannot conquer. Now imagine those depths not only dark, but filled with eyes larger than lanterns, with jaws that could shatter boats, with shadows that rise like mountains from beneath. The ocean would not be a place to cross, it would be a place to survive, if survival was possible at all. Still, there is beauty in this vision. Think of coastlines where the spray of water catches the dawn, and instead of seagulls, the horizon is broken by the arch of a plesiosaur's neck, moving like poetry across the waves. Think of the calm before night, when the sea glows faintly with bioluminescence, and behind that glow, enormous silhouettes glide silently, older than memory. The oceans of this alternate Earth would be both cradle and grave, a place where life thrives in forms too large, too alien, too ancient to ignore, a reminder that even beneath the surface, the gaze of evolution does not rest. And so the question lingers. In a world where the seas belong to giants, would the spark of intelligence ever dare to rise? Or would the oceans remain forever under the silent watch of monsters that never left? If the oceans were heavy with shadows, then the skies would be alive with wings. The air above this alternate Earth would never be empty. Instead of birds tracing small arcs across the horizon, there would be giants. Pterosaurs whose wings stretched wider than city buses, their forms gliding like living continents against the pale blue. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff after watching the waves. The spray settles, the sound of water fades, and then a new sound rises. The slow rush of air pushed by wings larger than sails. A shadow passes over you, not a passing cloud, but a creature, its body suspended in the sky by sheer power. Its beak tilts, its eye glitters, and then it drifts onward, carried by currents older than memory. The skies would not belong to one shape, but to many. Smaller pterosaurs, quick and darting, would skim rivers and lakes, their wings flashing silver in the sunlight. Mid-sized flyers would nest on high cliffs, their young crying out as parents glide back with fish and reptiles clutched in their jaws. And the giants, Ajdarchids, the towering masters of the air, would patrol silently, their wings steady, their presence heavy enough to cast moving twilight wherever they passed. This aerial world would shape everything below. Herds on the plains would move cautiously, scanning the skies before lowering their heads to graze. Smaller animals would live not only in fear of teeth on the ground, but of shadows above. Even forests would bear the mark of these rulers. Branches snapped by nests, entire trees bent beneath the weight of creatures who built their homes in the canopy. But the skies also hold a different possibility. In our world, it was birds who carried forward not just flight, but song, communication, even intelligence. What if here it was the pterosaurs? What if their cries, echoing across valleys, grew more complex over time? Patterns, calls, messages that held meaning. The conflict is not only survival, but potential. Would the skies have given rise to another form of thought, another path toward awareness, written not in feathers, but in leathered wings? Close your eyes for a moment and picture the world from below. The ground steady, the seas alive with shadows, and above, the air never still. Wings cut the sky in silence, some near enough to feel the rush of wind, others so distant they blur into the brightness of the sun. This is not a quiet world. It is a layered one, filled with motion from every direction. And as you imagine it, let the thought linger. In a sky ruled by giants, would there ever be room for the small? Would delicate voices, like birdsong, ever find space to be heard? Or would the rhythm of this world always belong to the thunder of wings? Beneath the thunder of footsteps, beneath the sway of forests and the sweep of wings, another story struggles quietly. Not the story of giants, but of shadows. Mammals, small and fragile, trying to exist in a world that never gave them room to rise. In our reality, the asteroid's strike cleared the stage. It ended the age of giants and gave the timid survivors a chance to grow, to adapt, to eventually become us. But here, in this alternate Earth, there is no vacancy. Every space is already claimed. Every riverbank, every canopy, every open field belongs to reptiles whose bodies stretch beyond imagination. Picture one of these mammals, no larger than a rabbit, darting through underbrush beneath the towering feet of hadrosaurs. It lives in silence, its ears pricked for danger, its body built for speed and concealment. It feeds on insects,
roots, perhaps the occasional egg if it dares. It emerges only at night, when the giants rest, though even then the sky holds predators with keen eyes. Its existence is not growth, not expansion, but endurance. For millions of years, life would be this way. The mammals would adapt to shadows, longer whiskers, sharper senses, quicker reflexes.
Some might climb trees, living in the safety of branches. Others might burrow deep, safe from the vibrations of footsteps above. But none would rise to dominance. None would rival the scale or strength of the dinosaurs. The conflict here is subtle but profound. Intelligence, as we know it, thrives not in dominance, but in opportunity. It emerges when creatures must solve problems, when they must innovate to survive. But in a world ruled by giants, problems are answered not by thought, but by size. Strength, armor, speed, these are the currencies of survival. What room is there for fragile hands, for minds that dream, when the ground itself shakes with the weight of bodies larger than houses? And yet, the spark of possibility is never entirely gone. Some mammals might still evolve in strange directions. Bats, perhaps, could emerge, small flyers competing with the pterosaurs in the shadows of dusk. Rodent-like creatures could diversify, clever enough to slip through cracks in the giant's world. Perhaps even primates might appear, but they would remain small, their voices drowned in the chorus of roars and calls that fill the earth. Close your eyes and imagine living like this. Always hidden, always watching, never in control. To be a mammal in this world would be to know the taste of caution as instinct, to measure each moment by risk. The earth would not belong to you. It would be a place you borrow in silence, returning always to the safety of the dark. And as you picture this quiet struggle, let the question settle gently. Without catastrophe, without an open stage, would intelligence like ours ever have had the chance to bloom? Or would it have remained only a faint ember, flickering in the shadows beneath the feet of giants? Every world passes through ages. In our reality, extinctions tore the earth apart and rebuilt it, layer after layer. But in this alternate earth, without that shattering asteroid, the age of dinosaurs would not end abruptly. It would stretch forward, settling into something like a long middle chapter, an ancient middle age of life, where giants still ruled, but with balance instead of upheaval. Picture vast plains stretching from horizon to horizon, herds of sauropods moving like rivers of flesh across the land. Their necks rise above the canopy, swaying in rhythm as they feed on treetops, shaping forests into open spaces. Around them, smaller herbivores graze, each species finding its niche in the endless cycle of growth and consumption. The land is steady, not empty but saturated, every corner filled with presence. Predators, too, would have found equilibrium. No single hunter could dominate forever. The tyrant forms, vast and powerful, would roam the edges of herds, their presence enough to trigger ripples of movement across miles of grassland. Raptors, smaller but more cunning, would work in groups, testing the edges, pushing the weak into danger. The balance is brutal, but it is not chaos. It is rhythm, repeating across millennia, steady as the tides. And the earth itself would reflect this stability. Volcanoes still erupt, rivers still carve valleys, continents still drift. But without the reset of extinction, ecosystems would layer upon themselves, ancient forests growing older than any we can imagine. Entire landscapes shaped not by fire or ice, but by the weight of creatures that never surrendered their place. There is a strange comfort in this vision, a world where life is not constantly reinvented, but perfected in its scale, where creatures live not in constant fear of collapse, but in the certainty of their roles. And yet, this comfort holds conflict, because stability, though peaceful, can also mean stasis. In our world, catastrophe cleared space for diversity, for change, for new experiments of evolution. In this alternate Earth, with dinosaurs entrenched in every niche, would innovation slow? Would evolution plateau, giants locked into endless cycles of dominance, their forms refined but never transformed? Close your eyes and imagine standing on this land. The air is thick with sound, low calls, distant roars, the rustle of forests moved by herds. The earth feels ancient, settled, almost timeless. It is a world where you sense not the pulse of change, but the weight of continuity. And as you breathe in this vision, let the thought come quietly. Is stability the same as survival? Or is it only the long pause before the next great shift, an age that could last forever, until the world itself decides otherwise? In a world where dinosaurs never yielded the earth, predators would continue their long, patient work of refinement. They were never static, even in our reality. Each generation was a response to prey, to climate, to the endless dialogue of survival. Without the great extinction to end their reign, this dialogue would stretch on, sharpening forms into something even more formidable. Imagine the descendants of the great tyrannosaurs. In our world, they were already apex hunters, jaws crushing bone, senses tuned to the faintest movement. But millions of years more would not leave them unchanged. Their frames might have grown heavier, more powerful, muscles layered over bone like armor, or perhaps leaner, swifter, trading brute force for endurance, capable of chasing prey across open plains for hours. Their eyes, already keen, could have grown sharper still, hunters not only of instinct, but of strategy. Smaller predators, too, would not remain as we remember them. Raptors, agile and coordinated, might have followed another path of evolution. Pack hunters with more complex communication, using signals, calls, even gestures to coordinate their strikes. Their intelligence, already hinted at in our fossils, could have expanded, making them not only deadly, but adaptable. Imagine a landscape where the shadow of a raptor pack carried as much weight as the roar of a tyrant lizard, and the arms race would continue. Herbivores growing thicker armor, horns sharper, tails heavier, each defense answered by predators that adjusted, refined, pressed forward. In our world, this race ended abruptly, frozen in stone. In this one, it would have carried on like an endless conversation, predator and prey writing each other's futures with every encounter. But the conflict beneath all of this is not simply survival, it is dominance of scale. In our timeline, mammals found freedom in niches dinosaurs left behind. Here, no such spaces exist. Predators grow, refine, rule. Prey adapts, endures, resists. The balance is eternal, but the cycle may never break. Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of a forest as the sun falls. The air is heavy, filled with the scent of earth and plants. Then, in the distance, you hear it. Not the thunder of herds, but the low, steady rhythm of something approaching with intent. The forest shifts, shadows deepen, and you understand that this is not chaos. It is order. A system millions of years old, perfected and unbroken. And so the question lingers gently. Would such predators, honed by endless ages, remain only hunters? Or could the refinement of their senses, their strategies, their intelligence have led them somewhere else? Toward awareness, toward thought, toward a kind of mind that does not merely stalk, but wonders. If predators sharpened into hunters of greater strength and cunning, then the herbivores of this world would answer with equal patience. Evolution never favors one side without a reply. In this alternate Earth, where dinosaurs endured without interruption, the great plant eaters would not remain as we remember them. They would become fortresses, moving across the land in herds vast enough to reshape the Earth itself. Picture a plain at dusk. The air is filled not with the calls of a single species, but with the layered sounds of thousands. Hadrosaurs, their crests resonating like horns, call across valleys as their herds drift through rivers of grass. Above them, towering sauropods stretch their necks into the canopy, pulling entire branches free with each movement, reshaping the forest into open corridors. The land itself bends to their hunger, the rhythm of growth and consumption written in their shadows. But with predators pressing ever harder, defenses would grow more formidable. Ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs, would evolve weapons that rival spears. Imagine herds of triceratops-like creatures, but larger, their frills extended like shields, their horns longer than lances, sharp enough to pierce the flank of a tyrant hunter. In formation, they would not be prey, but armies, their movements like regiments on parade. Ankylosaurs, too, would have refined their armor. In our world, their tails ended in clubs heavy enough to shatter bone. Here, with millions of years more, those clubs might have grown even deadlier. Spikes, ridges, reinforced plates, entire herds moving as living tanks, their shells reflecting sunlight like shields of steel. For predators, such creatures would be less food than challenge, trials of endurance and courage. Even smaller herbivores would adapt. Some might grow faster, taking the path of speed rather than defense. Others could refine their senses, warning their herds with calls before danger appeared. Each adjustment a step in the endless dance, each change a note in the symphony of survival. The conflict here is not only predator versus prey, it is the earth itself, balancing scale with scale, strength with strength. Every horn answered by sharper teeth, every shield tested by greater force. A world locked in a conversation without end. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing in the middle of one of these herds. The ground trembles, the air shakes with low calls, the horizon is alive with movement. You are surrounded by living fortresses, their size overwhelming, their presence unshakable. To be among them is to feel small, fragile, but also strangely safe, because in their numbers, in their unity, there is something beyond survival. There is resilience, an ancient truth written not in thought but in flesh. And so the question rises gently. In a world where life protects itself with armor and scale, where strength answers strength, is there room for delicacy? Could the fragile spark of intelligence, small and unarmored, ever survive in the shadow of such giants? Imagine walking through Earth not as it is, but as it might have been, a planet without us. No cities, no roads, no farms, no towers, no engines, only the slow, thunderous presence of creatures that never left. To live here would not be to build, but to witness. This Earth would be less a home for humans and more a museum, alive, breathing, but entirely not ours. Picture the continents as vast landscapes unbroken by walls or wires. Forests stretch endlessly, uncut, their edges fading into swamps and rivers. Mountains rise without scars of mining, their slopes covered in green. At night, the skies are pure, undimmed by lights, filled with stars and the silhouettes of wings that drift silently across the moon. The earth is ancient and whole, untouched by the hands that in our world reshaped it. And everywhere there are dinosaurs. Herds move like tides across plains, leaving pathways that will never become roads. Predators shadow them, their roars echoing through valleys that have never known human voices. In the oceans, reptiles rise and vanish, the rhythm of their presence older than memory. On the shores, giant footprints sink into sand that will never be crossed by shoes. This world would be breathtaking in its scale, but also humbling. Without humanity, the earth would not pause, would not diminish. It would thrive in forms older and stranger than us. To stand here would be to realize how small we truly are, that life's grandeur does not depend on our presence. But the conflict is deeper. Our reality is built on our absence from that world. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs gave rise to us. Without it, we would be at best shadows in the underbrush, or not here at all. This alternate Earth is beautiful, yes, but it is also alien. It is a planet that does not need us, a museum where we are only visitors. Close your eyes and imagine walking through this place. The air is thick with scents of earth and leaves. The ground trembles beneath the passage of herds. The sky above is alive with wings. You look around, and there is no trace of human presence. No signs, no lights, no voices. Only the pulse of life, steady and ancient, unbroken for millions of years. And as you let this vision linger, the question comes softly: is the world more alive with us, or without us? Do we add to the Earth's story, or are we only a brief interruption in a tale that was never ours to begin with? So far, we've wandered through forests, seas, and skies filled with giants, creatures of muscle, bone, and instinct. But evolution does not only shape bodies. Sometimes, under the quiet pressure of survival, it shapes minds. And so we ask, in a world where dinosaurs never left, could intelligence have risen among them? Consider the raptors. Small compared to tyrants, but agile, clever, and social. Fossils suggest they hunted in groups, coordinated their strikes, perhaps even communicated with calls or signals. In our world, that line ended before it could fully unfold. But given millions more years, could those sharp claws and sharper instincts have been joined by something else? Awareness, planning, memory not just of prey, but of possibilities? Or imagine the hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs. Their crests were hollow, shaped to produce sound. Some scientists believe they used them to call across valleys, complex tones resonating through herds. Could these sounds have grown into language, into patterned communication, as rich as birdsong, or richer still? Herds bound not only by instinct, but by shared meaning. Even the giants, the sauropods, invite the question. To us, they seem too vast, too slow. Yet intelligence is not always about quickness. It is about adaptation, about fitting into the rhythms of a world. Might some line of them have developed memory across generations, traditions passed by movement, by migration, by the silent inheritance of paths that stretch across continents? The conflict is subtle but profound. In our reality, intelligence was rare, fragile, and it took catastrophe to give it space. Here, the stage is already filled with dominance. For a mind to rise among giants, it would have to carve its own niche, not in size, but in thought. Could that spark survive in a world where power is measured in tons and teeth? Close your eyes and imagine it for a moment. A raptor standing still, watching the horizon, not with hunger, but with curiosity. A hadrosaur herd. Their calls not only warnings, but stories, echoing into the night. A sauropod path, ancient and deliberate, remembered not only by instinct, but by choice. These are not the images we know, but they are not impossible. And so the question lingers gently. If dinosaurs had remained, would the Earth now be filled not only with their bodies, but with their minds? And if so, what kind of civilization would they have built beneath the same stars we gaze at tonight? When scientists look back at the fossil record, one group of dinosaurs sometimes stands out as a what-if of evolution: the troodontids. Small, bird-like predators with sharp senses, keen vision, and relatively large brains for their size. In our timeline, they vanished with the rest. But in a world where extinction never came, perhaps they would not only survive, but change. Imagine creatures no taller than a child, moving lightly on two legs, their hands more flexible than most dinosaurs, their eyes forward-facing, capable of judging distance, their movements precise and deliberate. Already they hint at something more than instinct, at problem-solving, at planning. Given millions of years, could they have stepped onto a different path? Some paleontologists have even speculated what they might have become. They called the idea the dinosauroid, a thought experiment in evolution. Not scaly monsters, but beings upright, agile, with large eyes and hands capable of grasping tools. A vision not entirely alien to us, yet entirely separate. Intelligence shaped not by mammals, but by reptiles. The conflict here is not whether it could happen, but what it would mean. Intelligence is not inevitable. It requires space, challenge, and opportunity. Would these creatures have found enough room to experiment, to grow? Or would the constant presence of larger, stronger dinosaurs have kept them forever small, forever clever, but never free? And yet, intelligence does not always need dominance to arise. It can grow in shadows, in edges, in the cracks of power. Perhaps the troodontids could have survived by being not the strongest, but the smartest. Learning to use terrain, to coordinate, to anticipate. Over time, that spark might have spread, from survival to memory, from memory to language, from language to culture. Close your eyes and imagine them in the twilight of a forest. Small shapes moving between trees, their calls soft, patterned, purposeful. One picks up a stone, not by chance, but with intent, striking it against another. A sound, a possibility, the first hint of a tool, the first step into something we might call civilization. And so the question drifts closer. If dinosaurs had been given time, could minds like these have risen beneath the canopy? Minds that looked at the stars, not as prey or predators, but with wonder. And if so, what would we call them? Creatures of the past, or the first citizens of a different Earth? If intelligence had found its way into the lineage of dinosaurs, then civilization itself might have taken a form very different from our own. Not shaped by hands of flesh and bone like ours, but by claws, tails, wings, and bodies evolved for survival in another age. Their world would not be a mirror of ours. It would be something entirely separate, familiar in its purpose, alien in its design. Imagine a settlement, not built of stone blocks stacked into right angles, but shaped into the land itself. Nests woven into the sides of cliffs, reinforced with branches, bones, and hardened clay. Paths worn into the earth by generations of clawed feet, marked not with symbols carved in wood, but with patterns of stones arranged to catch the light of the moon. Instead of reaching upward as we do with towers, their architecture might stretch outward, blending with forests and rivers, vanishing into the landscape like extensions of nature. The materials would follow their strengths. With claws suited for digging, perhaps tunnels would be carved deep into hillsides, chambers warmed by the earth itself. With bodies closer to birds, high roosts might be chosen, cities suspended on cliffs where wind and sky are constant companions. Wood, bone, and clay might be their steel, shaped into intricate forms that last not by weight, but by cleverness. And what of fire? Our civilization rose with flame. But for creatures covered in scales and feathers, perhaps fire would be feared, avoided, or tamed differently. Instead of burning wood, they might harness heat from volcanic vents, steam rising from fissures in the ground. Energy not as spark and flame, but as the steady rhythm of the Earth's own breath. The conflict here is vision. Civilization is not inevitable. It is a choice made possible by tools, by language, by cooperation. Would these creatures have chosen to build, to gather, to reshape the Earth? Or would their intelligence remain closer to nature, a civilization woven seamlessly into forests and cliffs, leaving little behind but patterns of movement, songs in the night, and stories passed from generation to generation? Close your eyes and imagine standing in such a place. The air hums with the calls of creatures not only surviving, but speaking, sharing, remembering. Nests glow faintly with the shimmer of bioluminescent plants cultivated for light. A path of stones winds toward a cliffside where silhouettes perch, watching the stars. It is not a city as we know it, but it is a civilization. Alive, functional, whole. And so the question rests softly. If intelligence among dinosaurs had risen, would their world have been one of conquest, like ours? Or would it have been a quieter civilization, a harmony of claw and stone, more ancient, more patient, and perhaps more lasting than anything we have ever built? Civilization is more than survival, more than tools. It is the act of creating meaning. If dinosaurs had developed minds capable of shaping their world, then surely they would have shaped their inner worlds too, through patterns, symbols, rituals, and the first sparks of what we might call art. Imagine a gathering at twilight. Small figures assemble on the edge of a cliff, their silhouettes framed by the fading sun. Some carry stones smoothed by water, others arrange shells or bones into spirals on the ground. The patterns catch the light, glowing briefly before night arrives. To us, it may look like decoration, but to them, it could be memory, or story, or prayer. Art in this world might not be painted on walls, but woven into sound. Many dinosaurs already had resonating crests, hollow structures that carried calls across valleys. With intelligence, these calls could evolve into songs, layered tones rising and falling, each herd or clan with its own patterns. Picture the night air vibrating with music not made by instruments, but by bodies themselves, voices that echo for miles, a chorus of existence written in sound. And with art comes ritual. Herds might gather at rivers, not only to drink, but to mark seasons, to honor migrations that have guided them for generations. Perhaps they would leave offerings, stones arranged in circles, bones aligned with the stars, nests built higher than needed, not for survival, but for meaning. The act itself would transform necessity into ceremony, survival into culture. Religion, too, might find its place. For creatures who live beneath skies filled with wings and oceans filled with shadows, the world itself would be overwhelming. To gaze at stars, or to feel the tremor of the earth, might stir a sense of something greater. Perhaps the thunder of herds would be seen not as chants, but as rhythm, a heartbeat of the world itself. Gods, for them, might not be figures in human form, but forces. The river, the storm, the shadow overhead. The conflict here is not between predator and prey, but between instinct and meaning. At what point does a call stop being a warning and become a song? At what moment does a gathering become more than safety and turn into ceremony? These are not human questions alone. They are questions of any being that begins to see the world, not only as it is, but as it could be. Close your eyes and picture this alternate Earth at night, a valley filled with shadows, the stars shining overhead. From the darkness voices rise, not roars of hunger, not cries of fear, but tones deliberate and patterned, carrying stories into the sky. It is not our language, but it is language. Not our art, but art nonetheless. And so the thought comes gently. If culture had taken root among dinosaurs, would it have reflected our own need for beauty and meaning? Or would it have been something so different, so alien, that we could only watch and wonder, never truly understand? Language is the bridge between minds, the invisible thread that turns thought into community. In our world, words carried across air and ink written on paper built civilizations. But in a world where intelligence belonged to dinosaurs, language would not mirror ours. It would grow from their bodies, their voices, their environments, an entirely different way of speaking the world into being. Imagine the hadrosaurs, their hollow crests already capable of resonating with sound. In our timeline, they used these calls to communicate across herds, low notes carrying through forests and plains. With intelligence, those calls might have evolved into something richer, layered tones, each shift in pitch holding meaning. Entire conversations carried not by words, but by harmonies that echo like instruments of bone. Raptors, agile and social, might have spoken with movement, a tilt of the head, a flick of the tail, a claw pressed to the earth, each gesture part of a complex grammar. Their packs would not need voices as much as signals, each body a sentence, each formation a story. In darkness, the glint of an eye or the curve of a spine could carry meaning as clearly as speech. Other species might weave language through touch. Picture smaller dinosaurs pressing against one another in patterns, their scales vibrating with subtle signals, like the hidden codes of insects or the sonar of bats. A living Morse code, felt more than heard. The conflict here is not whether language could emerge, but whether we would recognize it. To us, it would seem alien. No alphabets, no syllables, no words etched in stone. Instead, a world where communication is written in sound waves too deep for us to hear, in body movements too subtle for us to notice, in rhythms that flow with the wind and water. Close your eyes and imagine standing among them at twilight. A herd of hadrosaurs lowing in resonance, their tones weaving into one another until the air itself vibrates with layered meaning. A pack of raptors moves at the forest edge, their bodies tilting, shifting, each step a phrase. The scene is alive not only with motion, but with thought, shared, expressed, understood. And as you hold this vision, the question comes quietly. What is language, truly? Is it the shape of words, or the sharing of meaning? If creatures so different from us could speak in their own ways, would we even know they were speaking at all? Science is not bound to our species. It is the practice of noticing, of asking, of connecting one event to another. In our world, it grew through fire and metal, glass and ink. But in a world where dinosaurs rose to intelligence, their science would be written in other forms. Less about tools, more about rhythms, patterns, and the patient gaze of creatures who measured time in seasons, not seconds. Imagine a group of intelligent hadrosaurs gathered at the river's edge. They do not record with books, but with memory, passing knowledge through songs that carry not only stories, but cycles. When the rains come, when the herds migrate, when the stars shift in the sky. For them, the night is not only darkness, it is a map. Their crests resonate with tones that imitate the positions of constellations, patterns sung into air, preserved for generations. Raptors, agile and observant, might develop a science rooted in experimentation. Using tools not of metal, but of stone and bone, they could test, adjust, repeat. They would not write equations, but mark the earth with scratches, record movement with arranged stones, test cause and effect through behavior. Their minds, already sharp with strategy, could carry the first sparks of method. The idea that nature has rules, and those rules can be learned. Even the giant sauropods might have contributed in their way. With migrations stretching across continents, they would know the lay of land and sky, the positions of rivers, the timing of storms, the cycles of plants, all remembered not by words, but by pathways, instinct refined into knowledge. To them, the earth itself would be the textbook, and movement the lesson. The conflict here is not whether science could exist, but what it would look like. Without fire, without metallurgy, would discovery stall? Or would other paths emerge? Biological sciences written in breeding patterns, astronomy sung in the tones of crests, chemistry felt in the careful tasting of plants. Knowledge might not be carved in stone tablets, but embedded in rituals, stories, migrations, living traditions instead of static texts. Close your eyes and imagine the night sky above this alternate earth. A group of creatures stands still, their eyes turned upward. They do not write down the stars. They sing them, tones rising and falling, each constellation remembered as melody. To us, it would seem art. To them, it would be science. And as you hold this vision, the thought emerges gently. Knowledge is not one shape, not one path. If dinosaurs had built their own science, it might not look like ours at all. And yet, in its own way, it would still be truth. Technology is often imagined as steel and fire, but its essence is simpler: the transformation of environment into possibility. In our world, we bent ore into blades and circuits, harnessed flame into engines. But in a world shaped by dinosaurs, intelligence might have taken another path. Less about conquest, more about adaptation. Their tools would be born not of metal, but of stone, clay, bone, and living matter itself. Picture a raptor at the edge of a river, lifting a stone in its claws. It places the stone against another and strikes, not at random, but with intent. A shard breaks free, sharp, precise. Over time, such gestures might become patterns, repeated and refined. Flint edges could open shells, carve wood, shape bone. A technology of survival, built not on smelting, but on the raw gifts of earth. Other species might have shaped clay, not into pottery as we know it, but into structures. Nests reinforced with hardened mud, heated by the sun or by volcanic vents, could evolve into architecture. Chambers strong enough to last for generations. The earth itself, molded and reshaped, would become both shelter and tool. And then there is the possibility of biology. Some creatures, sensitive to plants and their properties, might learn to cultivate them, not for food alone, but for function. Fibers twisted into ropes, resins used as binding, leaves chosen for healing. Instead of forges and factories, their technology could have been gardens and groves, where knowledge of life itself became the foundation of progress. The conflict here is scale. Without metal, without fire mastered in the way we know, would technology have limits? Could stone, bone, and plant carry a civilization beyond survival? Or would intelligence remain woven into nature? A softer kind of progress, less about machines and more about harmony. Close your eyes and imagine their world. A settlement perched on a cliffside, chambers carved into rock, reinforced with clay and bone. Paths marked not with lanterns, but with glowing plants cultivated to light the night. A raptor places a stone edge into the earth, digging a channel to guide water toward a nest. A hadrosaur uses its resonating crest not only for song, but to signal across valleys, a form of long-distance communication. It is not our technology, but it is technology nonetheless. Functional, deliberate, alive. And as you let this vision take hold, the question drifts in. Is technology the measure of progress, or simply the shape intelligence takes in a given world? If the dinosaurs had built theirs from earth and bone instead of fire and steel, would it be lesser, or simply different? Where there is civilization, there is conflict. Not always of weapons, not always of conquest, but of boundaries, of hunger, of need. If dinosaurs had risen to intelligence, their struggles would not have been unlike our own, shaped not by ideals at first, but by survival. Imagine two herds meeting at the edge of a river. Both need the water, both have traveled far to reach it. Their crests resonate with calls, deep notes that vibrate in the air, warnings layered over warnings. For a time, they circle, their voices weaving into a tense chorus. And then, movement. Horns lower, bodies collide. The ground shakes with impact. It is not chaos, but ritualized violence, a way of deciding without annihilation, of testing strength until one side yields. Smaller, more agile species might have fought differently. Raptors, with their cleverness, might have devised strategies, ambushes, coordinated strikes, signals that echoed through forests. To them, conflict would be less about sheer power and more about cunning, each side trying to outmaneuver the other. Entire territories could be shaped by such invisible wars, battles fought not only with claws, but with plans. Over time, as their intelligence deepened, these confrontations might have grown more complex. Stone tools turned into weapons, nests fortified into strongholds. Territories marked not only with calls, but with symbols, warnings etched into trees or arranged in patterns of bones and stones. The earth would carry the memory of these struggles even after the voices had faded. The conflict here is not only about resources, it is about identity. In our world, wars shaped nations, stories, and beliefs. Among dinosaurs, conflict might have shaped herds into clans, clans into cultures, each defined not only by how they lived, but by what they defended. Close your eyes and imagine standing at a distance, watching such a battle unfold. The sound is deep, resonant, but not endless. After the clash, one herd withdraws, the other claims the river. Life continues. The wounded heal or fall. The rhythm of existence resumes, unbroken. And yet, the question lingers softly. If dinosaurs had built civilizations, would their wars have followed the same path as ours, escalating into destruction, into conquest? Or would they have remained closer to ritual, conflict tempered by the weight of survival? Would their intelligence have made them more violent or more restrained? Civilizations are not only built of stone and song, but of thought. In our world, humans turned questions inward. Who are we? Why are we here? What lies beyond the stars? If intelligence had taken root among dinosaurs, they too would have sought meaning, though their answers might have been very different from ours. Imagine creatures who live in herds that stretch across valleys, migrations measured not in days or years, but in centuries. For them, time would not feel quick or fleeting. It would feel heavy, patient, like the earth itself. Their philosophy might begin with rhythm, the rhythm of footsteps across plains, the rhythm of seasons, the rhythm of voices carried on the wind. Existence itself would be understood as continuity, each life part of a movement larger than the individual. Predators, sharper and more solitary, might have developed a different kind of thought. To them, philosophy could be written in silence, observation, patience, the contemplation of a single moment before the strike. Their questions might not be about the stars, but about the self, the nature of instinct, of choice, of control. They would ask, not with words, but with stillness. And perhaps some, looking upward, would wonder about the vastness above, not with telescopes or equations, but with eyes that track constellations through endless seasons. To them, the sky might not hold gods of flesh, but patterns of order, a map of eternity, a reminder that existence is not only struggle, but harmony. The conflict here is perspective. In our philosophy, we often seek to escape the earth, to transcend, to rise beyond. Dinosaurs, rooted in scale and continuity, might have sought instead to deepen their place within it. To them, the river would not be a metaphor, but truth. The mountain not a symbol, but a teacher. Wisdom might not be found in abstraction, but in immersion, in being fully, endlessly part of the living world. Close your eyes and imagine one of them at twilight, a small troodontid perched on a rock, gazing at the horizon. It does not move. It does not hunt. It only watches as the stars emerge, one by one, in familiar patterns. To us, it might seem like stillness. To it, perhaps, it is meditation, the quiet act of being within the flow of all things. And so the thought lingers gently. If philosophy had been born in creatures older than us, would it have led to temples and doctrines as ours did? Or would it have remained quieter, an understanding of life as rhythm, not question, as presence, not absence, as acceptance, not struggle? For millions of years in this imagined earth, dinosaurs would have been the unchallenged rulers of land, sea, and sky. But what if, despite the odds, our lineage still found a way? What if, hidden in shadows, small mammals slowly adapted, survived, and after ages of silence, emerged into the light, still fragile, but carrying the spark of curiosity that would one day define us? Picture the first encounter, a clearing at dawn, a group of small humans, no taller than children, edging cautiously from the forest, gathering fruit, breaking branches for tools. Across the meadow, shadows move, giants grazing in herds, their footsteps shaking the ground. The humans freeze, hearts pounding, while the creatures continue unbothered, immense and ancient, unaware of the fragile newcomers at the edge of their world. The Earth in this timeline would not belong to us. We would exist, but not as dominators, more like guests, finding space in the margins. Hunting would be dangerous, gathering precarious, survival a daily negotiation with giants that neither noticed nor cared for our presence. Fire, tools, shelters, They might come, but each innovation would exist in the shadow of a world already claimed. And yet, intelligence thrives not in comfort, but in challenge. Perhaps living beneath the gaze of dinosaurs would sharpen us in ways our history never required. We would become quieter, quicker, more observant. Our tools, lighter and more adaptable. Our strategies, rooted not in conquest, but in coexistence. Every decision measured against the weight of creatures larger than houses. The conflict is clear. Humanity, even if it arose, would never hold dominion. Our myths would not be of lions and wolves, but of thunder lizards. Our fears would not be of storms alone, but of shadows that block the sun. Our very sense of scale would be different, measured not by our own achievements, but by the constant reminder of beings older, larger, and stronger than us. Close your eyes and imagine it. A human child looking upward, not at skyscrapers or airplanes, but at the neck of a sauropod stretching into the clouds, at wings that darken the sun, at seas where reptilian giants breach the waves. To grow in such a world would be to grow small, but also be aware of power, of fragility, of the necessity of finding harmony where dominance is impossible. And so the question comes softly. If humans had risen in the age of dinosaurs, would we have become the same species we are now? Or would we be something different, quieter, humbler, more cautious, carrying wisdom not from ruling the earth, but from surviving in its eternal shadow? The first meeting between humans and dinosaurs in this alternate earth would not have been a clash of equals. It would have been a moment of silence, of breath held, of two worlds seeing one another for the first time. Picture a group of early humans moving through tall grass, spears in hand. Their eyes are sharp, their steps careful, but their prey is small. Fish, birds, perhaps a rabbit-sized mammal. Then, suddenly, the air shifts. A shadow crosses the field. The ground vibrates faintly. They freeze. Between the trees, a vast shape emerges. A hadrosaur, its crest glowing in the morning light, its body immense, dwarfing them as easily as a mountain dwarfs a stone. The humans do not attack. They could not. Their weapons, sharp enough for small game, are meaningless against such a creature. Instead, they watch, silent, hearts racing. And the hadrosaur, in turn, does not see them as rivals. It grazes calmly, its herd moving like a slow tide behind it, until the grass swallows them again, and the moment passes. Encounters with predators would be different. Imagine a clearing where a pack of raptors hunts. Humans, gathering fruit at the forest edge, sense movement too late. Eyes meet eyes, intelligence mirrored in both. The humans retreat, shouting, throwing stones, firebrands lifted. The raptors hesitate, calculating, then vanish back into the brush. Neither side claims victory. Both sides remember. Over time, these moments would shape myths, fears, and instincts. The roar of a tyrannosaur would echo in dreams for generations, a reminder of fragility. The sight of wings crossing the moon would inspire awe, perhaps reverence. To live alongside such creatures would be to live with constant awareness, every decision measured by the presence of beings so vast that they seemed less like animals and more like living landscapes. The conflict is not about dominance, it is about survival in the margins. Humans could never hunt the giants, nor truly defend against them, but they could learn to read the land, to sense danger in silence, to adapt in ways that relied not on strength, but on foresight. The first stories would be about these meetings, warnings carried in words, guiding the young. Do not wander near the herds, do not draw the eyes of the hunters, respect the shadows overhead. Close your eyes and imagine it. A fire burns low at night, a circle of humans gathered close. Above them, stars gleam in a sky unbroken by cities. Beyond the circle of light, vast shapes move in the darkness. They are not enemies, not yet, but they are reminders, ever present, that this world does not belong to us alone. And so the thought settles gently. In such a world, would humans have learned humility first, before ambition? Would our earliest lessons have been not of conquest, but of coexistence with giants who never surrendered the earth? To live in a world of dinosaurs would be to live always in compromise. Humanity, fragile and small, could not rule. Instead, survival would depend on learning to move within the spaces the giants left behind. It would be less about conquest and more about coexistence, about finding harmony in the margins of an earth already claimed. Picture a small settlement near a riverbank. Shelters of wood and hide lean low to the ground, blending into the reeds. Fires burn faintly, more for warmth than for defense. At dawn, herds of hadrosaurs pass nearby, their calls rolling through the air like thunder. The humans pause in their work, silent, waiting for the tremor to pass. Then, as the giants move on, life resumes. The settlement survives not by challenging them, but by flowing around their presence. In the forests, hunters travel cautiously. They do not pursue the great beasts. They would never dare. Instead, they track smaller prey, mammals, birds, fish. But their senses are tuned to the greater rhythms of the land. The crack of a branch, the hush of silence among birds, the sudden ripple of shadows overhead, all signs that giants are near. To ignore them would be to invite death. To respect them would be to live another day. The conflict is ever present, but not always violent. A herd might trample a field without intention. A predator might stalk the same trails humans use to gather food. Each encounter is a negotiation, sometimes with loss, sometimes with uneasy balance. Over time, these moments would shape customs, rules passed quietly from one generation to the next. Do not fish when the waters stir with shadows. Do not gather near the nesting cliffs. Do not light fires where wings patrol the night. And yet, within this caution, a strange form of peace might emerge. Humans would learn to mark territories not with walls, but with signs that giants could sense and avoid. Smoke patterns in the air, stones arranged in certain shapes, rhythms of drumbeats carried across valleys. Communication not between equals, but between species, each finding ways to exist without endless war. Close your eyes and imagine such a life. A child plays by the river, laughing as fish scatter in the shallows. Suddenly, the ground trembles. The child stops, watching as a sauropod moves slowly through the trees. Its body towers above, its steps steady, uncaring. The child does not scream. Instead, it sits quietly, waiting until the shadow passes, then returns to play. This is not fear. It is awareness, a deep understanding that to share the earth is to live in patience. And so the thought arises gently. If humans had grown in such a world, would we have learned humility as our first lesson? Would our cultures have been built not on mastery, but on respect for forces far greater than ourselves? In our history, humanity rose to dominance. We bent rivers, raised cities, and reshaped the earth to reflect our will. But in this alternate world, where dinosaurs never yielded, humanity's story would be different. We would not be rulers. We would be survivors, a second species existing in the shadow of giants who never stepped aside. Picture a human settlement on the edge of a vast plain. The huts are small, hidden among trees, their roofs covered with leaves to blend into the forest. At night, fires burn faintly, smoke carried low to avoid notice. Beyond the trees, the plain trembles with the movement of herds, sauropods stretching their necks into the sky, hadrosaurs calling across miles. The humans listen, their lives synchronized not by clocks, but by the thunder of creatures larger than their world. This civilization would grow differently. No great cities of stone, no towers of steel. Instead, villages scattered like seeds, built in places where giants rarely tread. Paths mapped not for conquest, but for avoidance. Trade not in riches, but in safety. Knowledge of where predators roam, of which valleys belong to which herds. Survival itself would be the greatest currency. The conflict here is not domination, but identity. What does it mean to be human, if not the masters of the earth? In this world, humanity would measure itself not by what it conquered, but by what it endured. Our myths would not tell of kings and empires, but of shadows that passed overhead, of rivers shared with ancient watchers, of the delicate balance that kept us alive. And yet, such a life might carry a wisdom our own history lacks. To live always in awareness of giants would mean never forgetting scale, never forgetting humility. Ambition would exist, but it would be tempered, tethered to the reality that Earth was never ours alone. Perhaps our art would be richer, filled with reverence for beings older than we could imagine. Perhaps our spirituality would be deeper, born from the daily reminder of fragility. Close your eyes and imagine standing in this world. A human elder tells stories to children by the fire. Behind their voices, the ground hums faintly with the passing of a herd. The children do not imagine conquering those giants. They imagine living alongside them, finding paths between their shadows. It is a smaller dream, perhaps, but not a lesser one. And so the question drifts gently. If humanity had never ruled, if we had grown always as second to another species, would we have lost something essential? Or would we have gained a different kind of wisdom? An understanding that greatness does not always mean mastery, and survival itself can be a form of grace. In a world where humans were never the rulers, encounters with dinosaurs would not always be at a distance. Over time, our paths would cross more directly, and the question would not only be how to survive near them, but how to live with them. Picture a river valley at dawn. A human settlement rises quietly with the light. Across the water, a herd of hadrosaurs drinks, their calls echoing like horns. The humans do not approach recklessly. Instead, they leave offerings on the shore. Bundles of fruit, polished stones, shells arranged in careful spirals. Not because the hadrosaurs understand in our sense, but because patterns and rhythms can carry meaning across species. Over generations, such gestures might become a language of coexistence, a way of saying, "We are here, we respect your path." With predators, the exchange would be different. Raptors, clever and social, might have recognized something in us, just as we would in them. At first, conflict, hunters clashing with hunters, prey stolen, trails contested. But perhaps, sometimes, uneasy truces. Humans leaving scraps at the edge of a kill, raptors holding back from an attack. Small gestures, repeated, could become habits, and habits could become patterns of trust. The conflict here lies in the balance between fear and familiarity. For every moment of peace, there would be danger. Fields trampled, hunters lost, settlements threatened by the sudden appearance of giants. And yet, humanity might learn not to think of dinosaurs only as threats. They would be neighbors, forces woven into daily life. Relationships built not in friendship as we imagine it, but in recognition, respect, and rhythm. Close your eyes and imagine it. A child by a fire hears her elders tell of the time when a hadrosaur herd spared their fields, or when hunters returned alive because a raptor pack chose to turn away. These are not myths of conquest, but of coexistence, of small exchanges that carried meaning across the gulf of difference. And as you let the vision settle, the question rises softly. If humans had grown up alongside giants, would our idea of community have expanded beyond our own kind? Would we have learned earlier that life is not only about rivalry, but about living together in patterns of respect, even when understanding is imperfect? Civilization, in this alternate Earth, would not rise above the dinosaurs, but beside them. Humanity, unable to erase their presence, would shape its cities, its culture, and its rhythms around the giants that walked the land. The result would be a world not of domination, but of coexistence, fragile, cautious, yet strangely beautiful. Picture a settlement grown into the roots of a forest. Houses low and curved, built from clay, wood, and woven reeds, blending into the landscape rather than standing apart from it. Towers would not rise to scrape the sky, for the sky already belongs to wings that cast shadows across the sun. Streets would not stretch wide for carts and trade, but narrow hidden paths designed to vanish in the grass, invisible to the passing herds. Agriculture, too, would be different. Humans would plant fields not where the soil is richest, but where the giants do not tread. Crops grown in terraces along cliffsides, in floating gardens on rivers, in pockets of land shielded by stone. Farming would not be a conquest of nature, but a negotiation with it. A constant awareness that one misplaced harvest could be crushed overnight beneath the weight of a wandering sauropod. Culture would reflect this humility. Songs would echo the calls of hadrosaurs, rhythms mimicking the thunder of herds. Stories told by fire would carry not only human heroes, but giants as eternal presences, forces of nature to be honored, not defeated. Rituals might involve watching migrations, marking the passing of herds like the turning of seasons. Even technology would grow differently. Instead of weapons designed for conquest, tools would favor endurance. Lightweight shelters, fast boats for rivers, hidden caches of food. Fire would be used sparingly, not to light the night like our cities, but carefully shielded, for flame might draw the attention of predators with eyes that gleam in darkness. The conflict here is identity. Humanity in this world would never imagine itself as Earth's master. Instead, its civilizations would measure success not by expansion, but by survival, by how well they could endure among beings older and stronger. To us, this might seem limiting, but to them, it would be wisdom. The understanding that greatness does not always require domination. Close your eyes and picture it. A city hidden in a valley, its homes glowing faintly with firelight. Beyond the valley walls, the ground hums with the steady rhythm of herds moving under the stars. The humans do not challenge them, nor do they flee. They live quietly within the spaces left open. Their civilization is small compared to ours, but it is also lasting, woven into the heartbeat of a world that never stopped belonging to giants. And so the thought lingers gently. If our civilizations had grown this way, humble, patient, cautious, would we have lost ambition? Or would we have gained a deeper sense of harmony, one that our real history has too often forgotten? As human societies grew, so too would their settlements. Villages scattered like seeds would, over time, gather into something larger, cities. But these cities would not resemble ours. In a world where dinosaurs never disappeared, urban life would not mean towering skylines or sprawling streets. It would mean places designed not only for people, but for giants who had never left. Picture a valley where cliffs rise steep and protective. Within, human homes cluster close together, walls curved like shells, roofs woven from reeds and clay. The city is alive with voices, but its design bends to forces larger than its people. Streets curve to avoid the paths of herds. Markets are built under overhangs, sheltered from the tremors of passing footsteps. Gardens bloom not in open fields, but on terraces carved into stone, safe from trampling feet. Now look beyond the walls. Not far from the city, dinosaurs move, herds grazing at the river's edge, predators patrolling the forests, wings circling overhead. They are not invaders. They are constants. The city breathes in rhythm with them, its daily life shaped by their presence. Trade pauses when herds approach. Celebrations wait for migrations to pass. The soundscape of the city is layered. Human songs, yes, but also the distant calls of hadrosaurs, the thunder of sauropod herds, the roar of predators on the hunt. In such a place, coexistence might even grow into partnership. Humans could learn to follow migrations, harvesting the land in patterns that align with the herds. Raptors, intelligent and social, might linger near city edges, their presence a deterrent to other predators, an uneasy but enduring alliance. The giants of the sky could even shape navigation, humans reading their movements as signs, their patterns as maps. The conflict here lies in scale. A city, no matter how carefully built, would always be vulnerable. One misstep from a titan could destroy homes in moments. One night of hunger from a predator could scatter a village. And yet, rather than resist, humanity would adapt. Architecture low, hidden, flexible. Streets narrow, designed to vanish into the land. Communities ready to move if the giants came too close. Permanence in such a world would mean not immovability, but resilience. Close your eyes and imagine standing in this city at dusk. Fires flicker softly, voices echo in narrow streets, children play in courtyards sheltered by stone, and in the distance, the ground hums with the passing of a herd, their silhouettes crossing the horizon, vast and unending. The city does not fight their presence, it accepts it, weaving itself into the spaces between. And so the question settles gently. What is a metropolis truly? Is it a place of dominance, of rising walls and endless light? Or could it be something humbler, a community that thrives by bending to forces larger than itself, enduring not by control, but by harmony? In our history, science and religion often moved in tension, one seeking to explain, the other to give meaning. In a world shared with dinosaurs, the two might never have been so separate. For how could humans gaze upon giants and not see both mystery and lore? How could they live in the shadows of creatures older than memory, and not weave both reverence and curiosity into their thought? Imagine a human elder teaching by firelight. Children listen as the ground hums faintly with the passing of herds in the distance. The elder does not speak only of survival. They tell of rhythms, how the giants return each season, how their paths align with the stars, how the timing of migrations marks when to plant and when to harvest. This is science, observation of cycles. But it is also faith, a belief that the world is ordered by patterns greater than themselves. Priests in this world would not build temples of stone, but gather communities at rivers, valleys, and cliffs where dinosaurs pass. The roar of a predator, the call of a hadrosaur, the shadow of wings across the moon, all would be treated as omens, signs that the living earth speaks. To pray would mean not to kneel before invisible gods, but to honor visible giants as messengers of forces older than humanity itself. And yet, science would grow quietly within this reverence. Humans would track migrations with careful memory, learning the distances herds travel, the places where predators linger, the seasons when wings darken the sky. They would study plants eaten by herbivores, learning which heal and which harm. They would watch the giants move with the stars, mapping constellations by the rhythms of bodies larger than mountains. The conflict here is subtle. In such a world, would knowledge ever be divided from belief? Or would science and religion remain intertwined, one explaining patterns, the other giving them meaning? To us, this might seem confusion, but to them, it would be wholeness. A world where truth and wonder are not rivals, but companions. Close your eyes and imagine a festival in this city of coexistence. Fires glow faintly, drums echo in the night. As humans sing, the calls of hadrosaurs answer from the plains, their tones resonating like horns. The people lift their eyes to the stars, marking constellations in harmony with the movement of herds. In that moment, science and religion are not apart. They are one act of listening, to earth, to sky, to the giants who share their world. And so the question lingers gently. Is knowledge greater when it stands apart from wonder? Or is it richer when the two remain joined, as they might have in a world where every day was lived beneath the watch of dinosaurs? If humans and dinosaurs shared the same Earth, coexistence would not always mean peace. Sooner or later, boundaries would cross, needs would collide, and conflict would follow. War, in such a world, would not be only human against human, but human against giants who never surrendered the land. Picture a valley where fields of grain cling to the soil, carefully tended by human hands. At dawn, the horizon darkens. The silhouettes of a sauropod herd approach. To them, the crops are no different from the forests they have eaten for millions of years. They move steadily, their footsteps trembling the earth. The humans gather, spears and firebrands in hand, shouting, striking drums, trying to turn the tide. But what are spears against bodies larger than houses? The herd does not fight, it simply continues, and in hours the fields are gone. A war not of intention, but of survival. One side hungry, the other desperate to protect. Predators would bring sharper battles. Imagine a pack of raptors descending on a village at night, drawn by smoke and stored food. Humans fight back with stone blades, fire, and traps. Some survive, some do not. Each encounter leaves scars, each loss remembered in stories, shaping rituals and strategies. Over time, these clashes would grow into campaigns, humans setting traps across trails, guarding settlements with fire pits, learning to anticipate the hunters, as the hunters learn to anticipate them. The conflict here is scale. Humans cannot conquer giants by strength alone. War would never mean domination. It would mean defense, deterrence, survival through cleverness. Traps dug deep, rivers redirected, poisons woven from plants. In time, some dinosaurs might even come to recognize humans as more than prey. Cautious rivals, strange beings whose strategies could wound even the mighty. And yet, wars would never end in victory. No human army could erase the herds. No campaign could silence the skies. Every battle won would only be temporary. Every settlement rebuilt in the shadow of future loss. War, in this world, would not be about conquest. It would be about balance. Fragile, temporary, always at risk of collapse. Close your eyes and imagine standing on the edge of a battlefield after such a clash. Smoke drifts low, fires burn faintly, and the ground is scarred with footprints far larger than your own. Humans gather their wounded, their voices quiet. In the distance, the herd continues, unaware, unbothered, eternal. To us, it may feel like defeat. To them, it would be life, an endless cycle of survival against forces too vast to overcome. And so, the question rises softly. Would war, in such a world, have made humans more violent or more humble? Would it have taught them despair, or would it have taught them patience, the understanding that victory is not to conquer, but simply to endure? Intelligence, as we know it, wears a human face. We measure thought by our words, our tools, our cities. But in a world shared with dinosaurs, that assumption would not hold. The question would not be whether humans could think, but whether we are the only kind of thinking that exists. Imagine watching a herd of hadrosaurs at dusk. Their crests resonate with deep, layered calls that carry for miles. To us, it may sound like noise, but to them, it could be language, patterns of tone and rhythm that mark danger, comfort, migration, belonging. A vocabulary of sound, older and more complex than our words, but hidden from our ears. Or picture a pack of raptors in the forest, their movements deliberate, coordinated. One tilts its head, another shifts its tail, a third takes a silent step. To us, it seems instinct. To them, it may be strategy, thought expressed through gesture, a grammar of bodies instead of voices. Even the giants, the sauropods who wander continents, might carry intelligence of a different kind. Not quick, not inventive, but deep. A memory of paths that span centuries, migrations that align with the stars. Perhaps their wisdom would not be in building tools, but in embodying rhythms so vast that we could barely perceive them. The conflict here is not whether intelligence exists, but whether we would recognize it. Our history shows how easily we overlook thought when it does not look like ours. We doubted animals, we doubted each other, we doubted even the stars. In this alternate Earth, would we have doubted the minds of dinosaurs, mistaking their patterns for instinct, their songs for noise, their wisdom for silence? Close your eyes and imagine standing in such a world. You hear the low calls of a herd echo across the night, the signals of raptors shifting in the trees, the steady rhythm of giants moving under the stars. You are surrounded not only by bodies, but perhaps by minds, alien, ancient, alive. Minds that do not dream of fire or cities, but of continuity, of presence, of being within the earth instead of above it. And so the question rests softly. Is intelligence a single path, or many? If dinosaurs had never left, would we have learned that thought is not only human, but a universal thread, woven through different forms of life, each carrying its own kind of wisdom? Now imagine the present day, not as it is, but as it might have been. A world where dinosaurs never fell, where their presence shaped every city, every invention, every dream. It would still be Earth, but one forever shared, forever divided between us and the giants who never surrendered their claim. Picture a city at night. Streets lit not by endless towers of glass, but by lanterns low to the ground, hidden from the sky. Beyond the city limits, herds move slowly across plains, their calls rolling like distant thunder. Farmers plant crops in terraces and floating gardens, safe from the feet of sauropods. Roads are narrow and winding, not to dominate the land, but to weave between the paths of the herds. Skies would not belong to airplanes alone. Imagine vast wings crossing above, pterosaurs gliding through moonlight. Air traffic would be planned around them, routes adjusted when migrations darken the horizon. The sound of their cries would blend with the hum of engines, a reminder that the sky is never ours alone. The oceans, too, would be different. Ships would sail cautiously, guided by sonar and song, always alert for the shadows of marine reptiles rising from below. Ports would not sprawl endlessly, but cling to sheltered bays, places where giants are less likely to wander. Commerce would move slower, shaped not by speed, but by respect for the unknown depths. Even our technology would reflect their presence. Skyscrapers would be rare, too fragile against tremors of passing herds. Instead, architecture would grow low, resilient, blending into hills and cliffs. Energy might come not from vast factories, but from systems harmonizing with the rhythms of the earth. Water wheels hidden in rivers, wind harnessed where wings do not fly. Humanity would still invent, still reach, but always within the boundaries set by giants. The conflict here is scale. In our world, we grew by rising above, by pushing outward, by claiming space as our own. In theirs, we would grow by weaving inward, by adapting, by remembering that Earth is shared. Ambition would exist, but ambition tempered by patience. Progress, but progress shaped by humility. Close your eyes and imagine waking in such a place. Outside your window, the air hums faintly with the calls of herds moving at dawn. In the distance, a sauropod bends its neck over the forest, pulling trees into silence. A pterosaur glides across the horizon, wings catching the morning light. The city around you stirs, not in defiance, but in rhythm with the giants outside. And so the thought comes gently. Would this world be less than ours, slower, smaller, humbler? Or would it be more, an earth where every moment is lived with awareness, with reverence, with the reminder that we were never alone? Two earths unfold in imagination. One is ours, the world of humans, cities, machines, and voices carried across oceans. The other is the world that might have been, forests trembling under the weight of sauropods, skies darkened by wings, oceans alive with reptilian shadows. Each is real in its own way. One lived, one only dreamed. And between them lies the question of what was gained and what was lost. In our world, the extinction of dinosaurs opened space. Without giants, mammals spread. From them came apes, and from apes, us. Intelligence grew unchecked. Ambition expanded without rival. We built tools, languages, civilizations, until the earth itself was reshaped by our presence. We gained mastery, speed, invention. We gained the ability to look at stars and ask not only what they are, but what they mean. But we also lost something. We lost the thunder of herds that shook the ground, the vast shadows of wings that crossed the moon. We lost the reminder that Earth is not ours alone, that scale itself can humble thought. Our world became quieter, smaller in its rhythms, easier to dominate. In mastering it, perhaps we also diminished it. In the alternate Earth, humanity never rises so high. Our tools are humbler, our cities smaller, our ambitions tethered by giants who move through the same valleys and skies. But in that humility, we gain a different wisdom, the awareness that life is not measured only in dominance, but in presence, in coexistence. We learn reverence earlier, patience more deeply, respect more fully. The conflict is not which world is better, but which truth matters more. Do we value the brilliance of progress, the speed of invention, the mastery of our path? Or do we value the richness of living in awareness, the constant reminder of forces older and greater than ourselves? Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of both worlds. In one, skyscrapers gleam, airplanes roar overhead, satellites orbit silently above. In the other, the horizon is alive with herds, wings, and shadows that dwarf all human effort. Both are Earth. Both are beautiful. Both hold meaning. And so the question drifts softly. Was the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs a tragedy, or was it a gift? Did it end one grandeur only to make room for another? Or did it silence a world more vast than we will ever know, leaving us with only echoes of what might have been? We often tell our story as if intelligence were destiny, as if the universe, from its first spark, was waiting for us, for thought, for language, for fire. But what if this is only our view? What if intelligence is not the goal of evolution at all, but only one of many possible experiments? In the world of dinosaurs, this becomes clear. For over 150 million years, they thrived without cities, without tools, without words. They were not less successful for it. They were complete, shaped perfectly to their world, adapted to rhythms larger than thought itself. They did not need philosophy to endure. Their presence was its own philosophy, existence as harmony, not conquest. Perhaps intelligence is not an inevitability, but a rarity, a fragile spark that appears when catastrophe clears space, when survival alone is no longer enough. If the asteroid had missed, maybe the Earth would never have needed minds like ours. Maybe the grandeur of life would have remained in scale, in rhythm, in continuity, not in thought. The conflict here is unsettling. We imagine intelligence as superior, the peak of life's climb. But what if it is not? What if strength, patience, or balance are equally valid ends? What if a sauropod's steady march, a raptor's coordinated hunt, or a hadrosaur's resonant call are just as complete, just as perfect as our symphonies and satellites? Close your eyes and imagine a night on that alternate Earth. The stars glow, the air vibrates with distant calls. A herd moves across the plain. A predator waits at the edge of shadow. Wings drift silently above. No thought of progress, no dream of conquest, only presence, only being. It is not less than our world. It is different. And so the question rises gently. Is intelligence the crown of evolution, or only a branch on its vast tree? If dinosaurs had remained, would the Earth today be less complete? Or would it be complete in another way, without ever needing us at all? For so long, we have looked to the stars as if they were waiting for us. In our history, telescopes traced their patterns, rockets pierced the sky, and satellites now drift like silent messengers between planets. But in a world where dinosaurs never fell, the gaze upward would be different. The sky would still be filled with stars, but it would also be filled with wings. And that changes everything. Imagine standing in a valley at night. A human settlement glows faintly below, fires flickering low against the dark. Above, constellations shine. But they are interrupted, broken, and remade, as vast silhouettes cross the moon. For people in this world, the sky is never still. It is alive, a place of movement, a place where Earth itself seems to rise into the heavens. Civilizations here might still wonder about the stars, but their questions would be shaped by coexistence. To them, the cosmos might not be a place to conquer, but a mirror of the rhythms below. The migration of herds across plains, the cycles of predators and prey, the endless return of wings, these patterns would echo in the constellations, stories told not of gods alone, but of creatures that walk beside them. And if intelligence had risen among dinosaurs themselves, their vision of the stars would be even more alien. Raptors, sharp-eyed and social, might map constellations as trails, paths across the heavens to mirror the forests they hunt below. Hadrosaurs, their crests resonating with sound, might turn the night sky into music, each constellation remembered not as an image, but as a tone. For them, the cosmos would not be silence, it would be song. The conflict here is not between earth and sky, but between ambition and acceptance. In our world, we looked upward and dreamed of escape. Rockets, voyages, colonies. In theirs, perhaps the stars would not be places to reach, but patterns to honor, stories to pass down, reminders that existence is vast, and not all of it must be touched to be meaningful. Close your eyes and imagine it. The night air hums with distant calls, the stars glow above, wings drift across the horizon. A child looks upward, not to dream of leaving Earth, but to feel it more deeply, to sense the rhythm of a world shared with giants, a world where the sky itself seems alive. And so the thought lingers gently. Is the purpose of the stars to be reached, or simply to be seen? If dinosaurs had remained, would the cosmos be not our frontier, but our mirror? A reminder that wonder does not always demand conquest, only attention. As this long vision draws closer to its end, we can begin to see its shape. A world where dinosaurs never left is not only a question of survival or curiosity, it is a mirror held up to us. It asks who we are, what we value, and what kind of Earth we believe ourselves to inhabit. In this alternate Earth, humanity is never the ruler. We are not the sole authors of the planet's story, but one of many voices within it. Our cities are smaller, our ambitions quieter, our dreams tethered by the presence of giants. And yet, in that humility, we find something real. We learn patience, respect, and a deeper awareness of the fragile space we occupy. Dinosaurs, in turn, become more than relics of the past. They are partners in existence, reminders that life does not bend to us alone. Their herds mark the seasons, their calls echo through our rituals, their shadows teach us scale. To live beside them would be to live with constant awareness that the Earth is larger than ourselves, older than our ambitions, and stronger than our grasp. The conflict, gently, is this. In our world, we gained mastery, but often lost reverence. In theirs, we would gain reverence, but never mastery. Which path is richer? Which carries more wisdom? Close your eyes and imagine the quiet of such a world. A human settlement glows faintly at dusk. Beyond its edges, the ground hums with herds, the air stirs with wings, the waters shift with shadows older than memory. The people do not fight this presence. They live within it, weaving their lives around the patterns of creatures greater than themselves. And so the thought comes softly. Perhaps this is not only a story about dinosaurs. Perhaps it is a reminder about us, that even in our world, where giants are gone, the lesson remains. That Earth is not ours alone. That survival is not conquest, and that reverence may be the truest form of wisdom we can ever hold. And now we return to the question that began this journey. What if the dinosaurs had never gone extinct? We have walked through their forests, swum in their oceans, and flown in their skies. We have imagined intelligence in their eyes, songs in their voices, cities in their shadows. We have wondered how humanity would have survived among them. Whether we would be smaller, humbler, wiser, or perhaps never here at all. The answer, in the end, is not certain. Perhaps dinosaurs would have remained only instinct, their world complete without thought. Perhaps intelligence would have bloomed in unexpected places, carried by raptors or sung by hadrosaurs. Perhaps humans would still have risen, but as survivors in a shared Earth, living always in awe of giants. What is certain is this: life does not move with purpose, but with persistence. Evolution is not a path toward us, but a vast tree with countless branches, most of which never reach the sky. Our existence is not inevitable. It is fragile, improbable, born from catastrophe as much as from survival. Close your eyes and imagine the Earth as it might have been. A planet alive with thunder and shadow, where every horizon holds a reminder of forces older than our kind. A place where intelligence may or may not rise, but where life itself thrives in endless forms, each perfect in its way. And then, open your eyes to the world we do have. The dinosaurs are gone, but their echoes remain, in the fossils beneath our feet, in the birds that sing above us, in the fragile truth that we are here only because they are not. And so, the final question lingers gently. Do we honor this gift by mastering the earth, or by remembering that it was never ours to master at all?